let's get into some recruiting news. Florida, you said earlier in the show, they didn't capitalize enough on the momentum they had going into this game. We still had some good recruits at this game. I mean, for a noon game, I'll start off with probably the biggest name that was at the game, Khyree Jackson. He's the 124th ranked composite prospect. Some have him top 100. Some have him a little bit lower, obviously. Committed to USC. He's a player that back before the season was seen as a Gator lean. He was at the Miami game where Florida got boat raced by Miami. And then he visited USC the next weekend, which they had a lot of momentum because they beat LSU. And then they had like some bye opponent week 2. I can't remember who. So they were 2-0 with a top 25 win against LSU. They were a legit playoff talk team. But now we're starting to see USC. They did clinch a bowl game against UCLA. So they still have that. But from where they were when he committed to them on impulse, they're not the same team. And neither is Florida. And the development, the Florida linebackers. And it's not just the experience like Shamar James. And, I mean, Pup was playing good until he's out for most likely the season, I think. But you're seeing the other young guys like Miles Graham and Jaden Robinson, Aaron Childs, sorry. You're seeing those guys develop, which I do think is a lot for Khyree Jackson, who some would consider an elite linebacker prospect.
Yeah. I'd say a guy that, from everything kind of I can tell, at least from the way like Florida's sort of posturing here, it kind of seems like this is a guy who they feel wanted to be a Gator, kind of like you said, committed on impulse. I think a lot of these guys sort of put Florida out of sight, out of mind when it looked like Billy's was done and dusted, like his fate was sealed. So I think maybe he's kind of one of these guys that you're back in the mix for now. And I think of the guys we're going to talk about, probably one of the guys I feel better about, I would say.
For a high-rate prospect.
Yeah. One of the likelier flips of the guys that would like be a guy that would move the needle on the class.
Definitely would. I think he could be a great player for us. So, and definitely I think wants to be a Gator. So that point you brought up, I really liked. Next player we're going to get, 4-star running back committed to FSU. Sorry, FSU fans. Just adding on here. Byron Lewis. I'm assuming it's Lewis. Sorry. He is the 231st ranked prospect on the composite. Another running back. We're seeing Jabbar Jalouk really develop these running backs at an elite level. So it's like we're not going to get the 5 stars. Like his nephew, Harlan Berry, is committed to LSU, and he's a 5-star prospect. So, I mean, it'll be cool to get a 5-star. But, like, I mean, we're seeing he developed Montreal Johnson, developed Trevor Etienne. He's developing Jaden Ball, Jacoby Jackson. We have a couple other young guys, too, I really like as well. So, I think that's really a big selling point for us. And, I mean, FSU losing their offensive coordinator, Alex Atkins, a line coach, offensive coordinator. I assume they're going to make a lot more staff adjustments, too. So, I'm not sure what's going on with them. I do like FSU's running back room a bit. I do think they have good running backs. So, I mean, that's probably a big thing for him as well. So, I don't think it's just that Florida is good at everything and FSU sucks at it. I think Florida's a little bit better and Florida has more momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I think all these guys, I mean, you got to not feel great if you're FSU, just considering kind of the different trajectories as we've talked about here. But yeah, I mean, I agree about Jalouk. Like, I think that, you got to trust their evals here. Because, I mean, he's not the highest rated guy. I mean, still a 4-star. But, yeah, I mean, I think, not a huge need the running back position, but it'd be nice to add a guy because you are losing Montreal. So again, another guy that I would say you're probably in a pretty good position to flip here, especially now that you've added guys like Pierre Louis, who, by the way, I should mention is also high school teammates with Khyree Jackson.
He absolutely. So. Oh, yeah. I mean, that gives us a great chance for him. The next prospect, Tennessee corner commit, Onis Konanbanny. He's the 339th ranked prospect, 4-star corner. I think. So I'm not sure a lot about him. I know you talked a little bit about him when LSU was recruiting him, so you know more about him. But I do think he sees Will Harris. I think Will Harris is really developing our corners at a really good rate. Jason Marshall went from someone who's a really big disappointment from a 5-star to maybe like someone who to be like a 4th or 5th round draft pick compared to where people thought he could be like a 1st round guy. And to now, before injuries, Jason Marshall was really climbing up that ladder. Devin Moore as well, Devin Moore had been playing really good before the injury. Dijon Johnson's really developing really well. Chiquez Bridges, I think he's just a good corner, like a experienced guy. So I don't know how much you give credit to Will Harris for that. But I think he also sees that the depth injuries at Florida, maybe somewhere he could play early. Because, I mean, we lose Jason Marshall. Devin Moore might come back. And Dijon and Jakeem Jackson, these guys might come back. None of those guys are like first-team All-SEC players going into the next season. So it's definitely a position that, hey, if you're a young guy and you step up, you can come play right away.
And to Billy's credit, like, yeah, the track record's there for that. All these guys have played a lot. Like, he rotates these young guys in a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, Conan Manning's a guy that, from Columbia, South Carolina, but committed to Tennessee. So I think that'd be a pretty significant recruiting win, by the way. He's not like the highest rated guy in the world, but like to beat out a team in Tennessee that, first of all, from all I can tell, has its financial situation together for the most part. And a team that's winning, probably a playoff. I mean, after everything that happened yesterday, they're basically a lock if they beat Vanderbilt.
Yep.
Yeah, essentially winning in against Vanderbilt. So their program's in a pretty good spot right now. So I think flipping a guy from a rival when it's Florida State in the middle of a 2-9 season is, I think, a lot different. It's a lot different than flipping, a dude from South Carolina who's committed to a good winning program right now, one that beat you. So.
Yeah, they did beat us. I mean, I don't know if he was at that game. I do know Tennessee had some of their commits elsewhere in the country too, which is really interesting, as they were also playing a home game. So, I mean, maybe Tennessee's a little worried about recruiting. I mean, they're 7th in the country right now. As long as they stay in that top 10 range, they'll be fine. So, but hey, I'd love to flip him. I know he was doing the Gator Chomp during the game and after the game in the locker room. But, I mean, so were other Tennessee fans. So,
yeah.
Next guy we're going to look at, 3-star offensive lineman, Cincinnati commit. When I first was thinking about him, like, man, a group of 5 player. Cincinnati's in the Big 12. Just really hit me like that. But Jari Medlock, Florida's already getting predictions to flip him. I mean, I think this is just an obvious case of Florida being a way better program than Cincinnati is. And his NFL future is definitely brighter at Florida than would be at Cincinnati. I mean, if he's off for looking for money there, Florida probably easily passes Cincinnati there. Rob Sale is developing his guys, too. We're seeing Bryce Levette get a ton of snaps. Jai Harris starting. Austin Barber and Jake Slaughter both being really good starters. And Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. I think he's had an underrated season. I feel like we saw Cameron Wait start 0 passing grade at week 1 against Miami. So, and just like forget about the position and think the O-line was going to be trash all year. But Dixon's really put together a solid season.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard not to say that the staff has had pretty good evals along the offensive line, even if you're not necessarily like recruiting at the level you would want to see ideally. Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who like not gonna like significantly not gonna be one of the highest rated guys in the class. Guy that probably you would think if Florida really like puts the pressure on, can probably land.
Today.
But I think he was that.
I said we could probably land today. He'd probably flip now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I think that would be a fine addition. I mean, I think it's probably an addition that you don't look as highly upon if the Gators ultimately fail to flip Solomon Thomas, something like that. I would say, if you start looking at, I think the message is a lot different there if he's a depth guy in a class that also has a 5-star along the offensive line versus.
It is. I mean, if you know how the recruiting rankings work, like the composite score for team rankings, it's really based on your top 10 rated guys. Because if you land 5 stars, I know Miami's class 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, when Florida had 10 guys in the top 250, which it had a higher average than what Miami did, but Miami finished 7th. It's because they landed 4 or 5 stars and another 4 top 100 rated guys. And because of that, those guys weigh out differently for those lower rated guys. So flipping Solomon Thomas would be huge for the class as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Getting into the next target, 3-star wide receiver Arizona commit another Big 12 flip we are probably going to make. Muiz I'm not sure I pronounced the last name. Tunkara? That makes sense. Tunkara. Right? That sounds right. Big body wide receiver. Don't really have too many of those. We have a bunch of faster guys like Vernell Brown's more of a slot or speedy option as a 5-star. So Muiz Trawally, solid take for the team. I mean, he's seeing Billy Gonzalez develop wide receivers. Elijah Badger's going to get drafted likely. DK's a solid wide receiver. Might get playing time in the NFL. Ricky Pearsall was a first-round pick. So, I mean, really, Arizona obviously has Terrell McMillan, who might be a top 10 pick. But, I mean, when you look at everything else going around, Florida's program's on the up. Arizona, as an Arizona fan myself, Arizona is not looking good for the future when they lose Noah Fafita and McMillan. I mean, everything just kind of points to Arizona for Florida flipping him if he is a take.
Yeah, I think we're kind of at the tier. Like, these are guys that, like, I'd say we both probably expect Florida to flip, or certainly if the interest on Florida's part is as real as it seems like it is. Yeah, I mean, I think they're mostly guys that are going to be like more project developmental guys. But the class, I mean, you got to fill out the class a little bit. I mean, it's not quite where it needs to be numbers wise, because you are losing a decent amount of players. Yeah. So for whoever was asking earlier, like our predictions for the next like commits, probably one of these guys, I would say, like someone like Tunkara.
Definitely is. I think I forgot to send a player to you, or I forgot to write it down. Okay, I forgot to send it. Kellon Wyatt, 4-star linebacker. I did? Oh, I did. I forgot to write it down. Okay, I'm not sure his ranking. I think he's like the 300s.
Yeah, he's certainly a 3-star. Yeah.
He's a 4-star. He's a 4-star composite
Is he a 4-star? Oh, okay, yeah. Never mind then.
Like lower rated 4-star, but still. Okay. He's a guy with a high upside, 6'4", 220. I think he fits into that role that we're seeing Gums and Childs play right now. I can't confirm that. I've been asking, but haven't got a response yet. So I think that's where he fits in. He's listed as a linebacker, obviously. Someone that Miami really wants. He does have a prediction to go to Miami, but instead he was supposed to visit Miami, but on Thursday or Friday, he said he's not going to Miami, decided to visit Florida. I think this is a guy that really does have a high potential and at a position where Gums is going to be leaving next year. I assume he's not leaving this year, but and I mean, Child's a true freshman. You do want some more guys to fill out that role. I mean, I think he's someone with a really high upside that maybe also a bit of really good pass rusher with his size.
Yeah, I mean, I think depth there is important because we've seen the Gators have to turn to those guys. I mean, Shamar's had his share of injury problems. Obviously, Pup down the stretch here this season. You know, I think you definitely do need more linebacker depth. And I think this is interesting because it's one of the few guys that Florida's really pushing hard for right now who's uncommitted. Like most of these guys they're going after are flips. Obviously, you are going head-to-head with Miami. He's an Armwood guy. I think the fact that like you said that he ended up ultimately coming to Florida, like I think that definitely bodes well. I'd say he's also a guy that I'd say the Gators probably have to feel pretty decent about their chances of adding to the class here.
Yeah, probably would have to. And then one name, I didn't even know he was visiting us. I was watching a bunch of videos, and then he was on the graphic. They didn't even talk about him on these while he was on the graphic. They didn't talk about him. 4-star defensive end. He's 122nd. Where was he? Right. 130th ranked prospect. 4-star defensive end, edge rusher listed as. Committed to Penn State, Jaden Woods out of Kansas. I haven't really looked at this guy. I just noticed him. So when I sent it to you, I had him as a question mark because he took an official visit. It wasn't just like an unofficial visit, randomly showed up on campus. I mean, he visited back in April as well. I don't know if he is a likely flip candidate or even someone that we should even talk about. But, I mean, this would probably be the best edge rusher Florida has recruited. So I feel like it's a big name that if there is a chance that he's going to flip, Florida really does need to push hard for.
Yeah, I'm with you here. Like, I don't have a ton to add because I don't know a ton about this guy either. Yeah. Kind of wasn't really on my radar until very recently. It wasn't on my radar until you sent him to me. But I would say that, like, that'd be a big deal. I think flipping a guy like that from Penn State. He's from Kansas too, right? Like he's not like a Florida guy or anything. Like no local connections. It's not a staying home pitch here. So appreciate it, Rob. But yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those things where Penn State has a good track record recruiting these guys. So I think if it's a take for Penn State, probably got to feel pretty good about the talent there. And second, like if you can get him, it's a pretty big flip. It's a lot different than going out and flipping a, low 4-star who's committed to Florida State. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely is. I mean, yeah, you look at Penn State, like they're developing those edge rushers like a Micah Parsons or Daniel Dennis Sutton for them currently. So it's like if he's a take at Penn State, I definitely want him. And you look at us recruiting edge rushers. I mean, Searcy has gotten better. I don't know if he's necessarily a great pass rusher, though. Maybe a good run stuffer. I mean, Jack Pyburn run stuffer as well. Mm-hmm. So if we can finally start getting some elite edge rushers, I mean, that could be a huge difference. And, I mean, this defensive line is already playing really well. So, I mean, get more of those edge rushers in. We might be all the way up.